What is it? Poking up?
Perfect.
No! Give me your phone.
Your phone.
Give me your phone. Isn't it ironic? Don't you think? A little too ironic. And there's so many kids that just wouldn't eat because they didn't like what was there. And we were going to be in 85-degree heat. Yeah.
You triggered right now?
I'm so triggered.
All right, welcome to the Mental Health Janitors, where we help you clean up the mess in your head. I'm your host, Sergeant Q, and with me, as always, Doc Jess.
Welcome, you guys. Thanks for being here.
We've got another great episode for you guys. The blind react videos people like those. So we're going to keep doing them until you guys tell us different. So we're going to do a blind react video, which is our current event, which is going to be pretty cool. Then we're going to go into our new advancement, which is the malfunction of the Neuralink and what happened, which is crazy. Then we got some really cool scriptures that we're going to share with you guys. Okay, Jess, tell us, what are we going to do for our practical app today?
Well, we're going to go over the pros and cons of homeschool and private school and public school and what that looks like and what I see as a counselor in my office to help prepare parents in both realms to be proactive in helping their kids in homeschool and private school and in public school.
All right. Yeah. Well, let's do our cards.
Yeah, cards.
People still want the cards.
Okay. So this one word question of the day, what light can be harmful to plants?
Bright light. No, just kidding.
Like Bug's Life?
No, like gremlins.
Ugh.
I want to say UV light can be, no, I would say that it would be a photon laser. It would burn it.
Green light. The reason plants are green is that they reflect green light and absorb all the other color spectrums for photosynthesis. If they were only put under green lights, they would most likely wither away and die.
Interesting. Okay, that is interesting because yes, growing up in the mountains of Northern California in the marijuana trade, when they would grow indoor, they would
talk about green.
No, they wouldn't use a green light. They would use a red light.
Yeah, so it's saying don't use green light. Green light is harmful.
No, but it needs to be in cycles, right? You need to have light spectrum on it, and then at night you turn off the light so there's no light. So it's not light 24 hours. The amount of light it gets per day tells it when to transition from grow to bud.
Yeah.
So at night, if you need to go in there, they would have these red headlamps that you had to turn on if you had to go in. But you didn't ever really want to do that, but they would use red. They should have been using green. Okay.
Interesting. You might have just given the marijuana industry a really good tip.
Because it wouldn't...
let's patent that idea.
Yeah, it wouldn't turn on the photosynthesis. So it's not going to damage it necessarily. It just won't help it to photosynthesize.
Yeah. It's a good point.
There we go.
Yeah.
Interesting.
All right, let's do this blind react.
Yeah, our blind react video. Let's see what this is about. So, Casey, you said this is a 10-minute video. We're not going to do all 10 minutes.
No, we're just going to do the part with the...
We're going to trim this down for you guys so you don't have to... We'll put the original link if you want to watch the whole 10 minutes, but we're not going to put that in here. Just give me a couple minutes. Oh, yes, our favorite anchor, Brandy Cruz. Here we go.
We all go together and say, look, here is what we have done. And what we need now is this funding for these reasons to support our students, and we cannot do that part unless you step up and help us. Right now, we don't have a whole lot to stand on when we have 29 schools with under 300 kids.
9 months before.
If it is so contrary to your values, what is being presented in public schools in alignment with the will of the voting public, you don't have to participate. You can withdraw altogether. Public school is a right that is afforded to everyone who lives in our communities.
Well, that didn't age
well.
well.
One is forcing you to participate.
Wow. Isn't it ironic? Don't you think? A little too ironic.
Well, there you go. I mean, you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of the Budweiser thing.
Ah.
Right? Bud Light. When they picked this agenda that was opposite of their core demographic, and they started losing customers. And what did they do? They doubled down on it, and it almost bankrupted the entire company, not just the one brand. And they're still suffering the after effects of that right now. Huge amounts of stock has been lost, and because stock prices dropped because of this controversy, because they didn't know what their core demographic wanted. They wanted to push this new agenda onto them, and they said the same thing. If you don't like it, you can leave. And they left. And that's exactly what we see with the schools.
Yeah.
Where it's the same person saying, we need all this money now because we don't have enough students enrolled, when you literally told the people, if they didn't like the curriculum, to take their kids out.
Yeah. And that's what they did.
You caused the problem, and now you want us to pay for the solution.
The problem that you caused.
Yeah.
That's not how it works, sweetheart.
No, this is what happens. This is why I tell people, vote these clowns out. If you don't like what's happening, vote them out. We have that power here in America. Now, on the national level, when it comes to president and all that stuff, I don't want to get into that, because does your vote count? Yes or no? What we really want to talk about are the local elections. This is where you really do have a voice. You really can make a difference. And honestly, it affects your life more, the local running, than it does on the national level. Yeah. Everybody wanted to focus there, but if you really make a difference, do it in your own hometown. And if you really don't like it, then stand up and run for one of these offices. Or like she says,
move.
Yeah, move.
That's why there's states, and that's why there's different states with different representatives go to a state that, I mean, how often have I wanted to move in the last couple of years? The only reason I'm still here is because I feel like God is saying, no, stay. They still need truth here.
Yeah, I don't even want to talk about that. That's exactly how I feel. I have this discussion with Pastor Matt all the time, because I travel all these other states, and I said, man, it'd be so easy to live my life anywhere else, but I'm stuck here. But God has not released me from this place.
Yeah.
He needs people to stay and fight, run for office, vote these people out. And here's the thing. The people that are in office in Washington state right now, they're not just liberals, okay? I have very good friends that are really very liberal. But what we're seeing now in politics is this extreme end of liberalism that's crazy. But the pendulum is going to start swinging back. I talk about this all the time, and we see it. We're starting to see this happen. We're seeing it right now in the Seattle public schools, where 20 schools are closing.
20 elementary schools
are closing because there's not enough enrollment. Where are these kids going? Homeschool, private school, charter schools. That's where they're going. And you can see now, a couple of years ago, where Washington State and California and Nevada, they were pushing really hard to stop charter schools from coming in and setting up, because then parents would not have had another option. Charter schools gave people another option. Online curriculum gave people another option. Private schools give people another option. Homeschool, another option. Now parents are not forced to put their kids into the current education system. They have choices now.
Yeah.
And this is why capitalism works, free market society.
Yes.
Because a socialist society or a communist society would say, this is the only school you can go to and you have to do it. But in America, we have freedom of choice. And people, you can vote with your dollars, just like you did at these schools, where you said, fine, I'll take my kids out and I have other options. Yeah. And now, because of the way the agenda they were trying to push, they've lost these students, and nobody's going to give them money to keep this failing system alive, because it's a train wreck.
And how come she can say, if you don't like what we're teaching, you can unenroll your child. If you don't like what our country stands for, you can go to another country. Why can't I say that, but she can say it? We see it all on both sides.
It's a double standard.
It's a double standard. It's hypocritical. If you don't like our country, I fought for it. And so I'm allowed to tell you to leave if you don't like it.
No, I don't want you to leave. What I want you to do is I want you to go to one of these countries, these other countries, and just live there for 6 months.
Yep, just 6 months.
And just experience that. And then you'll come back with a whole new set of eyes. Trust me, I travel all over the world on a regular basis. and there ain't nowhere else I could move anywhere right now.
Yep.
I'm staying right here because I know I have more freedoms here than I do anywhere else in the country. And if you don't believe me, go buy a ticket. Go. And I'm not talking a 2-week vacation at some all-inclusive resort. I'm talking you live there for 6 months. You deal with power outages and internet that's truncated and highly regulated so you can't get regular news.
Yeah.
Go deal with that.
Yeah.
Go deal with the infrastructure falling apart where power comes and goes whenever they want it to.
That's why Charlie Kirk says, I love Cuban Americans. Bring them all.
Yeah, right.
Because they're like, I love America.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. We could go on and on and on about this.
So last week we did kind of a funny blind react, and this week was more serious. Let us know what you guys think. Did you like the last week or this week? And you didn't see last week? Go watch it. It's just the first few minutes, and let us know which of these do you like? Do you like the funny ones or do you like the more serious ones? We love to hear what you guys have to say.
I like the funny because I get it all up in my feelings.
Well, the funny one was good, but this one is like, oh, go vote. Vote. Okay, so the Neuralink, I've really been on the fence with this thing because I understand the benefits and but I also understand the implications for evil with this. So if you don't know what the Neuralink is, Elon Musk has been developing it. He's not really developing it. He's just funding this thing, where it's an implanted chip that you can put in your brain. And what it's really designed to do is help people with mobility issues or cognitive issues to be able to help stimulate that part of the brain so then they can have functionality. They can get their cognitive capacity back. If they're a stroke victim, they can get their language skills back. Mm-hmm. If they have mobility issues, they can get some mobility back. Better quality of life for people who've experienced an injury or maybe had a birth defect. So I totally understand the nobility behind the idea of the Neuralink.
So it's not the mark of the beast?
No, because you have to wear that on your forehead.
Okay, just making sure.
Right? Unless you're implanting it on your forehead. But the Neuralink, it could be some nefarious things that happen. The same thing that we're talking about when we're talking about the AI last week and how the AI can be used for nefarious. So who remembers Johnny Mnemonic? Anybody? You remember Johnny? No? Casey? No? Oh, Casey does. Okay. So Johnny Mnemonic was this Keanu Reeves character where he had this implant in the back of his head, and you would like upload this data to him, and then he would go see this other person. They would download the data, and it's how you could transfer information back and forth like covertly. But it was also causing him to do things that he didn't want to do. And so that is kind of what people think about when they think of the Neuralink. Like, they could control me, which legitimately you could. If you send the right electrical impulses into somebody's brain, you can get them to do whatever you want. Right now, it's very rudimentary where, you send electrical impulses and you can get them to, put their hand up or down or things like that. Because it's all just electricity going through the brain. Yeah. But what if you could start to control thoughts, actions, and emotions in individuals? That gets kind of scary, right?
So scary. So scary.
So that's why there's been a lot of people very apprehensive about this, and I totally understand for good reason. So I've been on the fence on it. But
especially with the conspiracy theory that Elon Musk is the Antichrist.
Yeah, I know, right? Where he comes like, oh, this benevolent person, but not enough people love him. There's still people that hate him, right? Everybody's got to love this guy. So maybe not. Now, here's the thing. I've been watching this. So they gave the first Neuralink to a guy who had some mobility issues, and for 100 days, he did really, really, really well. He did really, really well. But he started to develop this condition, and I don't know how to say it. It's the pneumocephalitis, which caused a seizure. Pneumocephalus. It caused a seizure, and the seizure, so it caused this condition, which then caused a seizure. The seizure then fried the chip inside the brain and caused a malfunction, which started to kill him. And so they had to quickly remove it.
That was a blind react. Did you like that? What?
Right. So that's what just happened. And so they're not telling us everything. He's alive.
Okay.
He's alive. He was posting on X and stuff like that. But those are the things we have to really worry about. I mean, it's trial and error, right? You're going to have these things. That's how you learn, to make a cake, you got to break some eggs, right?
Yeah. Were those 100 days of building those skills worth it?
Yeah. And
maybe they were.
He did really well. And he seemed to, he's posting and able to have some new abilities, which were really great. So that was great, but there's going to be some inherent danger to it. So I'm going to be paying more close attention to this and see. I don't think they're going to do another human trial right away. I think they're going to have to go through and look at all the data that they got back and do some analyzing, build, measure, learn, right? And then how do we make it better? But it is super cool to watch these things and see how they develop. You know, could you then connect the AI to it? And now you could have a conversation with AI in your head and not necessarily on the computer.
I'll try that out.
Okay, Elon, here's your next
Elon.
Next one right here. Yeah. So, all right.
I'd be a great public speaker with a little chip in there just telling me what to say. Cool. Hey,
so talk about our scriptures.
Okay, so we're going to tie the scriptures into our practical and our tool, which also stems from that current event about being hypocritical, different standards, what happens. So what that is producing is a bunch of entitled children, students, human beings. This whole way of thinking has created, for the last couple of generations, has predominantly created more and more entitled children. And this wave of gentle parenting is sweeping across the nation. Because, and at the risk of going back into parenting, I'm not going to get back into parenting, but the pendulum was a couple generations before us. The children were to be seen and not heard. Suck it up, buttercup. You're not allowed to have feelings or emotions, boys.
Gen X, we're the feral generation.
Sure. And there's some beauty in that, in its place and in its time, but there's also beauty in the place in its time to be able to teach kids how to have appropriate relationships with their emotions and how to handle those emotions. And so instead of being on this stream ditch of either of those or pendulum, let's talk about what the middle looks like here. Okay. So the extreme of this, everybody is entitled and self-centered is what is causing the scriptures. This historical document warns us about this. Proverbs 29:15 says, "The rod and reproof give wisdom." And rod and reproof can mean discipline and redirection. It could be a timeout consistently with redirection. Structure, rules, expectations is rod and reproof, okay? So the rod and reproof give wisdom, but a child left to himself brings shame to his mother. Hebrews 12:11 says, "For the moment, all discipline seems painful rather than pleasant, but later it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it." And so the reason I wanted to talk about those scriptures is because there's so many scriptures that talk about how good discipline is for us to produce righteousness, to produce good work ethic, to produce selflessness, and to produce walking through life, doing hard things, and being okay with hearing what we need to change and grow in, and not thinking about just ourselves, but thinking about the other people around us. Does that make sense?
It does. You didn't want to go into parenting, but I felt like we were sliding into that ditch.
Good. We're not sliding into that ditch.
50% of Americans say that they or a loved one have suffered from mental health crisis. Together, we can change all that. Introducing QActual, a revolutionary new peer-to-peer based mobile application. Personalized to fit your lifestyle, with pinpoint GPS location in times of emergency. Connecting you to your care provider. With QActual, we will move you forward. Download QActual now and visit QActual.com.
The practical, I'll slide right into our practical so I don't get on my parenting soapbox. But the pros and cons of homeschool, private school, public school, all of that, okay? A lot of people have, and we've talked about, I think back in episode 36, we took a really deep dive as a current event into homeschooling and things like that. And so I implore you to go and watch that episode. But so many people are pulling their kids from private or from public school, and they're choosing private school, or they're choosing to homeschool or co-op or something in between. One thing that I would like to challenge parents from a professional counselor standpoint. So I counsel a lot of young adults and a lot of high schoolers who have been homeschooled and who have been in private school. And what I see is a ton of social anxiety to capitalize on top of COVID's natural consequence of social anxiety. And so what I mean by that is my daughter is private school / co-op. Okay. So people think, oh, well, they're still hanging out with kids at church. So they're learning social activity. Great. They are to a certain extent. However, there's that little group in their little small co-op is still a very safe bubble for them. So you ask those kids to go out and if they want to go out for a sport, and then it starts to feel uncomfortable because it's a bunch of kids they don't know, they say, oh, I don't want to do it. And parents say, okay, you don't have to do it. And they protect them from that uncomfortable conversation. Screens also are preventing children from having those one-on-one, face-to-face, uncomfortable conversations with other people. It's not going to hurt them, and you're sheltering them from having those conversations, uncomfortable conversations, is all it's doing is elevating their social anxiety. What it's doing is telling your kids, even though you're not meaning to, it's okay to be anxious about this, and it's okay to retreat when you feel this way. When we should be saying, it's okay to be anxious, but you still need to do it, and you still need to do hard things because that's going to prepare you for life. Does that make sense?
And how it prepares you is there's a small little piece of your brain. Well, it starts out small, but then it grows. It's called the anterior cingulate cortex. And when you do hard things, whether you win or lose, it doesn't even matter. But when you try hard things, that area of the brain grows, which then allows you to take on the next hard challenge and the next hard challenge and the next hard challenge. And we talked about this with professional athletes and with those in the military. That area of the brain is really big because we've had to endure a lot of hardship. Mm-hmm. We've had to try a lot of new things. And that area of the brain is really large for professional athletes and those in the military. But for the rest of society, they don't have the same opportunities to do hard things. And when they do see them, they retreat.
Yeah.
And so my advice is when you feel uncomfortable or your child feels uncomfortable, have that little pep talk, but send them out there anyway.
Yeah. I had a very similar experience with my 15-year-old. She's really athletic. And some of my best years was in high school playing sports. And so with her being homeschooled or in this little safe bubble and her having kind of an underlying social anxiety, I make her go out for public school sports. And so she played soccer in the fall and she did track in the spring. And track was a lot bigger than anything she's ever done. So she was about to walk into this gymnasium and there was like 140 public school kids. And she looks at him and she's like, starts to tear up and her social anxiety is kicking in, right? And my instincts as a mom is like, oh, my poor baby, she's scared. And she's like, Mom, I really don't want to do this, with the tears, right? And I had to fight. I wanted to say, it's okay, baby. Thanks for coming out and trying. Let's go home. But I was like, I can't do that. I don't want her to be sitting across from a counselor saying, why do I have such a hard time with this? Why can't I do this? I've got to push her to do hard things. So I said, I know, baby. Here's this coach that you know from the running store, and he's got your back. And I am just one phone call away, but I need you to give it all you've got for a couple days. Okay? She's okay. She goes in there. After 3 days, she's like, oh my gosh, Mom, I get to invite these kids to church and I've made a couple friends. I'm having a really good time. And I'm like, oh, thank God I didn't give in to my instinct to want to protect her in that moment, right? And unfortunately, that is a lot of us, especially as moms, our instincts. And something really interesting that I helped unveil, I didn't help, the Holy Spirit helped unveil in one of my counselings between a couple is a young man in his 30s who does not follow through on anything. And he is very complacent as a person, but he hates it about himself. So it's not like he's like, oh, I love being lazy. He hates it. He's like, why can't I finish it? Anything? Why can't I stick to anything? And this is what's so cool about counseling is you can kind of unpack childhood. And we found out in between first and second grade, his parents got a divorce and his mom was trying to overcompensate for his dad leaving the family. And he would get stomach aches and just get anxiety from not wanting to go to school. And she'd be like, okay, baby, you don't have to go to school. And so he missed most of second grade.
Oh, wow.
And then that started the trajectory of anytime something was uncomfortable, his mom wouldn't make him do it. And we were able to uncover that. And it's that whole saying of knowing is half the battle. He's like, that became an innate nature in my character that I have to now unlearn and relearn. I can do hard things. So let's start with small goals. This book I will finish in 2 weeks, and I'll do whatever I need to do in order to finish it. And he finished his first book, start to finish, and he felt like $1 million. And I said, let's keep on with that momentum. You can do hard things. You can finish things. And it was like really empowering for him, for me as a counselor, and the whole situation. It was really cool to watch that. So my challenge to you parents is stop sheltering your kids from doing hard things. Stop sheltering your kids from not eating what they don't want to eat. I was at this youth camp this weekend.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, the youth retreat. And there's so many kids that just wouldn't eat because they didn't like what was there. And we were going to be in 85-degree heat. Yeah.
Are you triggered right now?
I'm so triggered right now. Let me unpack this a little bit. And it's because then the camp nurse was 3 times as busy because they didn't have the proper nutrients to take care of themselves. So your failure as a parent to make your kids do hard things and eat things that they might not necessarily love, or drink water, they only like juice. You failing to do that and push your kids to do those things created 3 times more work on the volunteers that were at this camp. And that's very selfish. Whether you realize it or not, it's very selfish. And so when my kids go places, they eat whatever is put in front of them. They do whatever is told because I want those people to have a good time around my kids. And they do. And so that's another part of this doing hard things, is sometimes it's eating broccoli.
Well, and the other side of that, I'm a little bit different in that approach, where it's like, well, you don't have to do those things, but you're going to have to suffer the consequences of not doing them. So for me, and the way I raised my kids was, if you don't want to eat those things, you don't have to.
Yeah.
But you're going to suffer the consequences. If you want to go to this place and do this thing and you don't want to do what everybody else is doing, that's fine. You're going to have to sit out and you're going to suffer those consequences.
Sure.
So they're doing the hard things of, okay, I made this choice. Now I have to live with it. And I'm not going to, I'm not going to jump up there and be like, oh, here, since you're missing out on this activity, I'm going to have you do this other one. No. You're just not doing any, because those were your choices to do this thing or do nothing. And I'm not going to coddle you because of that.
No, my kids have gone to bed many a nights without dinner.
Yeah. And so I'm really big on personal responsibility
and natural consequences.
And exactly. And you don't want to do these things? Great. I have. No, I'm not going to tell that story. Never mind. But there are people that I know that are adults that still haven't learned this lesson. And so they're adults, and then I tell them, don't do this thing, and they do the thing, and then they have consequences, and then they call me and say, hey, can you help me out because I don't have money to pay my rent. It's like, well, I told you not to do the thing. You did the thing. Now you don't have money. I'm not helping you. I'm not reinforcing that bad behavior. I'm not
at all.
You're going to now suffer the consequences of your actions. That's not lack of compassion. That's when helping hurts. When you're helping somebody, but it's actually hurting them because they're not learning a lesson.
Yeah.
Pain is a perfect teacher.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
remember, you guys, to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and share these with your friends.
That's right. Because our goal here is to educate, empower, and encourage you on your mental health journey.
Yeah.
And so I'm Sergeant Q.
And I'm Doc Jess, and we're out.